Well, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, everyone. It is Lisa Gunshore here, and I am very excited to be back on today. Here we go. I got it sorted out, so we're both up here. And we are back. We had a wonderful morning with Deborah Lynn Katz this morning, and now I am live with Deanna Hansen, founder of Block Therapy and Fluid Isometrics. Welcome back, Deanna.
Thank you, Lisa. I am so pleased and honored to be back here communicating with you and your amazing community.
Oh, we just love you so much. And you just have such a warmth and a light. And it's just like, when you feel like you can just be yourself with somebody, like that's how I feel. So I love it. And for everybody who's joining in the live, I see you guys ticking in right now. You can use the chat box to the right of the screen here. Maybe it's this way. I don't really know if I'm flip-flopped on there, but whatever it is, it's on the right of your screen. And you can ask questions. If you have questions for Deanna throughout this entire interview, like go ahead and share them. We love it. I'll be moderating those. You can also share your comments or stories if you've had experiences with the block or whatever it is. Just share it. We love to hear it. And if you haven't yet clicked subscribe, please do. We hit our first milestone last month and we're on our way to our second one. We're really close to the second milestone on the YouTuber world that we live in. So with all of that said, Deanna, we were talking before we went live about what we want to talk about. And I think, I had a call this morning about the Ascension process. And there's 3 stages to Ascension. There is the initiation phase where you have that like initial awakening. Then there's an absorption phase where you're like absorbing everything that just you awoke to. And then the 3rd phase is integration, where you start to integrate everything. And it's really a great segue into what you do and the work you do in block therapy. I mean, it's just so great. And for everybody listening, we'll get the links up, but I do have all of the links up for block therapy on my partners page on the website also. So there's plenty of places to get the information. But I want to talk about detox. We're just saying, I mean, there is so much destructive energy, I guess would be the good way to say it, or negatively polarized information. And it's not just coming from the media and entertainment, but you see it on social media too. A lot of people attacking each other and just a lot of like heavy energy. And I know for myself, I have not been active the last 4 weeks and I can feel it. And it's like stressing me out because my body is like, please God, go move your body. And I haven't made the space for it. So I think we talk about detox. I don't know where you want to start or where you want to go with that, but I'm going to let you decide.
Well, I think, whenever we're talking about detox, it really comes back to the breath, because the breath is the most powerful muscle in the body. And I think the last time we talked, I did quote that 2014 study that was done in Australia that proved that 84% of weight loss comes through proper exhalation. And I have learned over time that weight loss is really a function of decompression and detoxification. So if 84% of weight loss comes through exhalation, it's because we're detoxing through that process. And whenever I'm teaching people about proper diaphragmatic breathing, I often share that we can be in a very calm situation, but if we aren't breathing diaphragmatically, we're living in a stress mode in our mind. We can be in a very stressful world, but if we're living in that diaphragmatic breath, we're in a calm place in our mind and body. So we are the ones that have the power to control what's happening internally. And we don't have the control to happen externally. Clearly, there is so much. And it's sad that there is so much bashing. There's so much division, and again, that's kind of the point, right? That's how divide and conquer. So the powers that are controlling things are trying to conquer, but we have the choice not to be divided. And I really do believe it comes through connecting to yourself, to your cells. Your higher self wants to be healthy, happy, joyous. It wants all those things. And it is our birthright to be that way. And we've been given this phenomenal muscle to help control what is going on within ourselves. And we're the only ones that can control that. No one else can, but we've lost it. We weren't taught in the beginning how to breathe properly. I'm 51 years old. So my generation and older, and even just a little bit younger, we were born diaphragmatic breathers. Over time, pain, fear, and stress cause us to reactively hold the breath. As a result, we end up breathing more through the muscles of the upper chest. And that is where, and it was Eckhart Tolle in The Power of Now. He talks about that. Diaphragmatic breathing connects you to a calm brain pattern. Breathing through the muscles of the upper chest changes that breathing pattern to stress, where fear lives, thoughts of future and past. So we need to stay present in the moment. He also says that's where God lives, in the moment. I fully agree with all of this stuff. So when we get back to the power of that muscle, then we do have that ability to turn off the information that we don't want to come into our bodies. And even if we do bring it in through hearing it, seeing it, whatever that is, we can allow it to leave through that full exhalation. But the challenge is for people that are starting, because the fascia will grip and adhere to bone with a 2,000 pound per square inch force, our diaphragm is locked away right now. So the block process undoes that grip so that we can begin to access this powerful muscle. And it's a lifestyle, it's a continuation. So ultimately, I've heard we have anywhere from 30 to 100 trillion cells. Who knows how many there are? I don't know, but there's a lot of them. And every single one of those cells is designed to communicate with the brain, to deliver messages so that we can stay in the moment and respond accordingly each and every moment of the day. However, if we have blocks in our tissue so that that blood can't send blood to, or the heart can't send blood to those cells, now there's gaps in the communication system. And that's where we start falling into that space. We start relying on memory. And memory, again, is thoughts of past. So that connects us to that negative brain frequency. So in order to take control of your own inner state, your own peaceful state, it really does come down to the breath, accessing this muscle and properly supporting the rib cage and all of the foundations in the body. Because if your cells are situated where they're supposed to be, then they're not under stress. It's when the cells migrate away from home that they start undergoing issues. The first thing that they'll do is they'll let you know that through pain. If we ignore that pain, they'll start to scream a little louder. If we continue to ignore those signals, eventually that tissue gets shut down. And that's when we start really seeing disease set in. However, I don't believe there's any dead tissue in a living body, just tissue blocked from life, which with block therapy, we can get those roadblocks out of the way, stimulate flow again, and make sure that those cells are properly fed and clean. And if they are, then we have that control of our body and our mind and our emotional state as well, because it's all connected. And then we can choose to be how we want to be, as opposed to letting the outside world choose for us.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You said so many good things in there. And one thing I want to say about the breath, like it is so important. And I actually heard a really lovely practice the other day, and I forget where I heard it from, but they were talking about face coverings. I don't want to use the M word, but they were talking about face coverings. And if you in fact have to do this because you're choosing, hopefully it's coming from a place of choice to enter a store, whatever you're doing, to actually practice deeper breathing during that time, and to take away what may feel like a negative experience and turn it into a positive process of breathing deeply into the diaphragm and making that like a mindful thing you're doing during that time, instead of feeling like something's cut off. And I thought that was really good. And what you're saying is reminding me of that. And then I think too, just remembering like when we are in our home environments and out in nature, especially, I think that's been my saving grace. Like I went up in the mountains this weekend. I'm so blessed that I'm an hour from the Rocky Mountains, being up in the high country, and just breathing that fresh air in. I mean, just practicing that breath in the fresh air and getting that into your system. And I always visualize like all my cells like waking up when I do that. And so just like you're saying, it's like beyond, don't you feel like it's more important to breathe in this time than it's ever been, really?
Absolutely. And that's the problem with the M word.
Yeah.
It's basically stopping that function.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And then you also talked about you were talking about the power of now and some different things. And it just made me think of, turning on and off genes. I'm like such a little nerd when it comes to epigenetics and genetic SNPs and what we turn on and off. And it's even more nerdy because when you get into the physics and the spiritual physics of etheric RNA and DNA, it's like even more like I could go on forever. And so I just want to talk about that. What are your thoughts about what you're turning on, what you're doing, whether we're working with a block, working with the breath? My husband and I loved the partner exercises that you taught us back during the Global Healing Summit, and you guys can access that on the channel. And so we do those from time to time. And so I'm just curious what your thoughts are on all of that. You were talking before we went live about space, and I think it's all just good conversation. So.
And it was in Greg Braden's book, The Science of Compassion, I believe it was that one that he wrote, where he shares that the frequency of love equals the frequency of our DNA. So it looks like a snake like this. The frequency of fear is like this. So if you superimpose those two frequencies on the DNA, love frequency is going to turn on all of the codons in the DNA. The fear frequency only touches on some of them, causing the other ones to shut down. And with block, I'm always talking about space. As long as the cell is positioned where it's supposed to be, there's optimal space. And space is what we need. Imagine how you feel wearing that, right? There's less space. Imagine how you feel crammed in an elevator. If there's 30 people in an elevator, somebody has perfume that's too strong, somebody's talking really loud, you can't move. Like, how do you feel? That's how your cells feel when we don't have proper space for those cells to function, because they can't absorb what they need to thrive. And we can't clear out the waste, the byproducts of functioning, all of those things. So the cells become starving, fatigued, dehydrated, congested. So if the cells feel that way, that's who we are. Our cells are self. It's all the same thing. So when we create that space in the body, then the DNA, everything's speaking, because there's room for flow. As soon as we have, look at any city, like as soon as it's overpopulated and there's a traffic jam, it's not only time that's affected, but the air becomes polluted and clogged. So the body's the same way. We need to have open roadways in order for there to be free flow, free movement, free expression, all of those things. And without that space, we don't have freedom. And then we don't have the capacity to live in the moment, because there's gaps in the system. So again, we get caught into memory. And again, it's fear-based. It's not love-based. So that's the problem. And when you add in what is happening and all the fear that they're adding in, reactively, we're all holding the breath because we're just so afraid to speak. Some of us can't even speak the truth. For fear of what might happen. And that's kind of upsetting, because really, why can't we all just have a conversation? I'm not telling anybody what to do or what not to do, but people should at least have different perspectives on any subject, especially when it comes to our freedom and our health. And the problem is the direction that people are wanting to take this is taking away those freedoms. And that in turn is going to take away our health. And it's already happening, because we already know that fear takes away health, because it stops us from breathing. Oxygen is the first and foremost nutrient every cell needs to thrive. We die in 5 minutes without oxygen. And now we're being forced to cover the main roadway where that whole process takes place.
Yep, agreed. And I think, it's a very complex time, because not only is it fear in this moment, but it's traumas from so many time periods. And that's one thing I've seen. I actually got really emotional last week. My poor husband's so supportive, thank goodness. But I just can see all the trauma on the planet, lifetime after lifetime, thousands of years, ancient traumas. This isn't just about even a Holocaust versus now. This is like ancient traumas, long time, this control energy. And so all of that is coming up, and it actually like totally activates me energetically to talk about it, because there's so much trauma. And, when we talk about, like, I've had some very intense experiences on the block, releasing my own trauma. And lineage trauma, but we're not just releasing our own lineage. It's like all the trauma coming out at one time and trying to process through that. Also holding and processing the fear energy, plus the toxic energies, then you can't breathe. I mean, there's all these complexities. And so it's really like, again, like, what are those support tools? And the block is one of them, you know, is that resource, that support system to like connect into, to try to clear some of this away. Because it's really, you talk about blocked and compressed, like when you go into a grocery store, like it's a real practice, and I'm doing it, but it's a real practice to go to the store and like breathe in this contracted energy that exists in our environments right now. It's really challenging. And so what's your go-to right now, Deanna? I'm curious, like, what's your like go-to thing that's like, this is helping me release all this stuff truly? Is there like, but you know, I'm sure the block's part of it, a thing that you're doing right now that's like, this is absolutely has to happen every day for me right now?
Yeah, I'm educating myself as much as I can on everything not mainstream. So there's a lot of very interesting information, a lot of incredible people speaking on behalf of the truth. I am sucking it all up. I am taking it in. I am learning. I'm blocking, I'm breathing, I'm walking, I'm cooking. Now that the world's shut down, I've gotten back to cooking, which is lovely because my world was too fast paced before as well. And I ended up eating out in restaurants too much. And so getting back to the basics of cooking and slowing down and just slowing down. And I love it. I'm an introvert by nature. So in all reality, this lockdown period hasn't changed my personal life because I wasn't really a social animal anyway. So yeah, it's for me, it's the educating, because I find a massive amount of calm in that. As much as it's in some instances terrifying, I've believed this for 20 years already. 20 years ago was when this all started for me. And the world didn't make sense to me back then, because the approach that people took, the way that I saw people living, their bodies, the contraction, the youth today, oh my goodness. And what is coming as a result of that was terrifying. So and I was very blessed. Back in 2000, I went to the Prophets Conference in Victoria, BC. And that was where I had the opportunity to first listen to Greg Braden. I hadn't heard of him before that. I went because I had read the Celestine Prophecy, which was the first book that awakened me to energy and to a whole different way of looking at things. He was also one of the speakers there. So it was this incredible 3-day conference about what was coming. And I found that to be so exciting, because there's two sides to this. There's two sides to, well, there's probably multiple sides to everything, but I mean, there's the side that, you know, mainstream is taking, and then there's a whole other side. And I really do see this as being, they gave a great analogy. They said, if you looked at a woman in labor, you might think she's dying. So we're birthing into a new time. We're birthing into a new frequency. I fully, completely agree. We're moving into harmony. A higher frequency of love is surrounding the universe, and we're moving into that. But we have to tear down the walls of the old ways, and it's a process, and it's a painful process, because a lot of people, especially if they're not conscious of what's happening, their lives are crashing down all around them, and people are losing their jobs and their homes and their health, and all of these things are going on. However, if we could look ahead and we could say, okay, this is a process. I mean, how many women on this planet have given birth? How many people are there on the planet? And it's a scary process, but we do it, and we keep populating the world. So, you know, we can get past this fear time, and it's not fear if there's knowledge. And that's why I love Dr. Rashid Buttar so much, because he's not telling anybody what to do. He's saying what he'll do. And he just wants you to listen. What resonates as truth. And so all of these people are coming forward now that were not vocal in past, including myself, because there's a time and a place for it. And now is the time and the place. And I find that the learning of it is extremely exciting, because if we understand that we're coming into a really challenging time, we prepare, and we prepare properly. If we choose to stay ignorant and then we turn the corner and then we're in, you know, war zone, that's kind of terrifying. So the more we can arm ourselves with knowledge and connecting to the people that resonate with what's true for us, I think the calmer people will be. And then we can move forward and create a world that can sustain the future in a healthy, beautiful, harmonic way.
God, that's so well said. And I agree. I mean, I think that at the end of the day, you have to remember, like, are you aligning with unconditional love, or are you aligning with the opposite of that? And, you know, when you're aligning with unconditional love, there isn't a need to battle or argue, or there's just love. Like, that's what's there. And so I think when you're feeling that fear and you're feeling that stress, and I think we've all been there, where you start to snap at your partner or whatever because you're feeling that like anxious energy. And you know, my husband and I have created a practice where we kind of like remind each other, hey, we're getting combative, there, that energy's seeping in, that programming's coming in, like it's time to like realign, we're on the same page, like get back into the same place. And I think being armed with information is huge. I mean, I'm a huge researcher, so I think I'm just as like I feel your passion, and I'm like, yes, like read every book, learn everything, because it's so important. To information is power. It really is. And I remember like just coming out of the medical matrix in 2011 for me, it's pretty hard to see stuff that you never saw before. I mean, especially when it comes to your own participation in it. You know, it's like, oh, I was fine. I ate fine. I went to culinary school. I know how to cook, you know, and then all of a sudden you have to change that, and you start to awaken, and you look and you go, oh my God, that's what I was eating and doing. And, you know, and that's just one example. And so this is like magnified so much bigger now, right? Like this idea of all of these things we thought were not what we thought. And some of us have known it a long time, and some people are waking up to it today, and that's all okay. But the more information you can get, and listening to that information, and you know, if they're coming at, I love what you're saying about the man that you're following, because he's just sharing what he's going to do, you said, and what he thinks. And I think that's really important, because if you're hearing what we're doing and you're not feeling pushed or swayed or torn or whatever, then you know that they're coming from an aligned space. You know, they're not trying to scare you into something or make you feel something. We have so many comments, you guys. I'm going to share some of these. Oh my gosh. So Joan says she's an LMT, and she has to wear the M with some clients. She put in quotes. I love it. I'm finding I can actually be more mindful of my breath because I am focused on it so much during work. So that's kind of nice to hear. And then Chris says, I've started doing, I don't know what this is, Wim Hof Breathing Technique. It's hard but beneficial. Rachel from the Bahamas. Hi, Rachel. She says, hi, ladies. She said, tell us how block therapy benefits the vagus nerve. Oh, that's really good. We should talk about that, because that's like a big thing. I actually have a fun psychic tool we can talk about with that too. Joan says she's not familiar with block therapy, so you're learning about it now, Joan, and we can answer any questions about it. So thank you guys for all your comments. So I like this vagus nerve idea. I will tell you what, in the metaphysical world, cobalt blue is this amazing color that eliminates anxiety. So if you're ever having a panic attack, I went through a period of time where I was definitely experiencing panic attacks. And I'll tell you what, when your Kundalini awakens, sometimes your nervous system goes wild. And if you visualize the nervous system, the vagus nerve, and all of the little peripheral nerves, and there's so many great pictures of it online for visualization, it's super helpful. If you start at the top of the head and you run cobalt blue, the color cobalt blue, through your vagus nerve and you can do it right now. Doesn't it feel good? I mean, it just gets everything, and it's that cobalt blue, like that deep indigo blue, and you just run it through your whole nervous system and see it coming out into your peripheral nerves, and it just like neutralizes your nervous system. Isn't that amazing? I love it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, you can feel it. It's like,
very cool.
Just doing it now is so soothing, because we're on all these electronics. So that's my little trick for you guys about the vagus nerve. And honestly, it can completely neutralize a panic attack. So if you're having fear-based thoughts or anxiety during this time, like run that cobalt blue, like just visualize cobalt blue everywhere. And it just, but yeah, let's talk about block therapy in the vagus nerve. I want to hear what you do.
Well, and I mean, to the panic attack, that is how this whole journey began for me. It was 20 years ago when I was having the worst anxiety attack of my life. I thought I was going to die in that moment. I couldn't find my breath. And that was when I dove my hand into my abdomen. The first thing I encountered was pain, which took me away from the anxiety. But then what I recognized through just intuitively exploring with my hands in my abdomen was that it was full of what felt like scar tissue, even though I hadn't had injuries or surgeries in that area. So as I continued to, now I understand it, is create more space, get more flow in through there, get rid of those roadblocks and connect to that breath, it brought me to a place of calm. What was also quite interesting was by day 2, I also found that my belly was flatter than it had looked in years. After a couple of weeks, my chronic pains were going away. I was looking more forward to life in general. But when it comes down to any nerve, anything in the body, it comes down to flow. If we have blocks and we're not able to get that transmission, there's going to be chaos. And chaos makes us nuts because it's like static. You know, if all you hear is static, like, how do you feel? You feel itchy and yucky, right? So we want there to be ease of flow. And as long as everything has an ease of flow, which all that's required for that is space. You know, it's funny because people talk about the physiology, the what every cell needs to function. The body knows exactly what it needs. It needs us to look after our fascia system so that we can keep the flow gates open. And that's what block therapy is about. It's about finding those blocks. And we do that by lying on the block, connecting to the breath. And wherever there's pain, there's adhesion. So there's pain everywhere because nobody's body is aligned. Every cell has migrated away to some degree from where it should be positioned. And the further those cells migrate away from alignment, the more adhesions, the more chaos, the more static, the less health there is, the more stagnancy. So I used to say that I have anxiety. What I've learned now is if I'm feeling anxious, it's because my cells aren't getting what they need. So my cells are anxious because I'm asking them to work. But yet, if I'm not taking care of my cells, what are they supposed to do? Function optimally? How can they if I'm not giving my cells what they need to function? And because we don't think of ourselves, we don't consider ourselves. You don't think of your toe unless your toe hurts. You know, we like our feet, think of what our feet do. And, you know, as women, we stuff our feet into these little shoes and screw up our foundation so that we think we can, whatever it is. But that's the point. Our cells need consideration, care, and love. And without giving those cells what they need, they're going to speak. And they're not going to speak with pleasure because we're not doing anything for them that would deem that. They're telling us, hello, you're expecting me to carry, I'm 140 pounds and you're expecting me to carry you through the day and you don't even think of me? Like, what's going on here? So whether it's the vagus nerve, the sciatic nerve, whether it's a ligament, a tendon, your brain, an organ, your skin, your hair, it all comes down to flow. We need blood and oxygen flow to feed those cells. And we also need to be able to clean those cells so everything stays open, clean, and fresh. And just think of how you feel when you feel open, clean, and fresh. You feel great.
Yeah, it's true. It's so true. Chris is saying, wow, it's one of my favorite colors. I think you're probably talking about cobalt blue. I never knew that. Yeah, blue is a really good, it's a good color for all sorts of things. And Joan says fascia release is amazing. She says releasing the psoas will do wonders. So you guys can keep those coming. Throw out your questions too. I love it. I love it when you guys are all such a great audience. I love it so much. Do you find you get obsessed with certain spots? Like I'm obsessed with like the block, like here, like I'm really like, I can't, and I just want it all the time. Like, do you find that happens? What makes that happen? I'm wondering. Cause I'm like, get that block. I want to feel that pain. And you know, what's weird too, is when I'll find if I'm sitting at the end of the day, cause I'm at the computer all day, right at the back, let's see if I could put my laybook up in the air, you guys, but right here, like at the bottom of my calf, I just want to like push into it. I'm like, ooh, get in there. I don't know. It's weird. I'm just curious if you find like, are there spots that like, it's like you want to like smash them.
Well, I probably spend, I would say, an hour in total minimum per day on my side waists. Before this process, I had no waist. I was straight up and down with a belly. I was compressed and ballooned, round, constipated, you know, congested, just feeling awful, acidic, all those things. So lying in that sideways position, now I have an hourglass waist. So I get caught to doing that because I'm the first one to say, you know, you can't always work in one area, and the cause sites are the key. So where we have the pain, we want to work those areas. But if we only work the areas that we have pain, we're kind of missing the boat when it comes to the fascia. Because, for example, if I was holding your arm and I pulled on your arm and I did this for a year, your shoulder's exhausted. If you go and you get a treatment on your shoulder, it might feel good in the moment, but your shoulder's still exhausted. But if I let go of your arm, your shoulder can come back and then the tension's gone and then it can actually start to heal for real. So the way the fascia works is it will bind to bone, and the further from the engine, which is the diaphragm right in the center of the body, the more frozen the fascia. So the calves and feet, the forearms and hands, these are the areas where the fascia will most strongly bind, holding us out of alignment. So for a lot of people, you know, women in particular too, we might have that area where we feel bloated and we want a flatter belly and we want all of these things. So we might spend a whole bunch of time in that core rib cage area. If we don't unlock the calves and the feet, as soon as we start walking, that fascia pattern is going to pull us right back in, pull us down. And from a weight loss perspective, I was the person that did the work. The laws of weight loss didn't work for me. When I was in my 20s, I was eating little, working out like a fiend, and I was getting bigger, harder, more congested, more pain, more constipation, more anxiety. The harder I beat myself up, the harder I worked out my body, the worse it got. So now I have learned what we need to do, and we need to care and love our body. We don't want to beat ourselves up. So this whole fitness idea needs to be looked at from a different way. And I'm by no means saying stop doing activity that brings you joy, because it's good to be active. It's great to move, but we need to understand what we're doing from a fascia perspective. Let's say you're a tennis player, and for one, like you're using one side of your body and you're forcibly swinging this racket and this ball, and it's always one side. If you look at tennis players that are high level, the difference in the size of their forearms is phenomenal because they're working one side so much. So they've created this asymmetry. That's the kind of stuff that eventually can pull us into a scoliosis, because it's the limbs torquing on the core that are going to cause everything to fall out of alignment. So understanding the need to address the body from the foundation all the way up, connect to the breath, and make sure everything is properly aligned allows us to be in that effortless effort state that they talk about in yoga. It takes effort to sit upright. It takes a lot more effort to be collapsed and to have these muscles in the back of the body fighting that pull of gravity as we're getting sucked in through that fascia compression. So putting in a little bit of effort and inflating the body with oxygen brings a lightness and an ease to our movements. And it's a process, it's a journey, because whatever age you are, your fascia system is basically an accumulation of your entire lifetime to this moment. We're like sponges, and that can be physical. I mean, if we're living in a really toxic, dirty area, we're going to be absorbing that. If we're living in a toxic, emotional place, we're going to be absorbing that. What we eat, what we drink, all of that stuff, it matters. It all adds up. The injuries we've had, the surgeries, and just also the way that we live. If we play a sport, if we play an instrument, we're not balanced because of that. We're dominant on one side. So the more we use one side, the more asymmetrical we become, the more congested we become. So understanding what our activities do to us, and then having the block to bring that balance back, is part of the process. So we can still enjoy the activities that we want to do in life without suffering the consequence fascially, and allowing our bodies to age in the way that we think is normal, but really doesn't have to be, if we could just give ourselves a little bit of care and compassion.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. Well, and I know for me, like my two key areas, like when I'm hearing you talk and I'm like, the two things is, you know, I was in fashion for 20 years. So I wore heels for 8 to 12 hours or longer a day for 20 years, you guys. Yikes. So I'm battling, and I naturally have hamstrings that have been super tight. And so the entire, like from the center of, you know, my butt all the way down my hamstrings, my calves, it's all like, how do I lengthen this area? That's been a huge thing. And then my shoulders, because we have this natural like hunch in my family. And I'll tell you what, like, it's pretty amazing. Like I went 20 years of yoga, I've been doing yoga since 2000 and really didn't see any progress at all. Like in like a downward dog, for example, like I had to bend my knees and have my heels up in a downward dog. Like that was like my downward dog in order to get my back straight. And it's kind of amazing when you start working with fascia, like since January. I mean, it's July 29th. So in 7 months, I am like this close to having my feet flat on the ground in a downward dog. I mean, it's like 11 inches now of like length between the hamstrings, the calves, the feet. Like, I mean, it's many, many areas. But I'm pretty shocked. You know, the shoulders and the posture seems to be more challenging, but it's pretty shocking to like realize how much just working on the fascia, because I was stretching all day long, I didn't do anything. Like, what is the difference? And I know you've kind of talked about this before in other shows, but I think it's good for some of you guys who are newer. Like, why is that? Why is it that I could try to touch my toes and never do it? And the minute I start working with my fascia, suddenly I can touch my toes.
Great question. And and it's lovely. So I'll just give the example. I was also studying to be an Iyengar yoga teacher. And the way I approached my body is we would have these advanced 2-hour classes, and it was a 2-year program. And I got almost to the end. I didn't end up certifying with that because this thing took over for me. So that's what I ended up doing. But I would go to the class, I would get into the postures, I would identify what was holding me back from progressing deeper. I would go home for the week. I would work, this was before the block, but fascia decompression, fluid isometrics is the actual technique, block therapy, the self-care version. So I would do fluid isometrics on my tissue where I felt those restrictions. I would release that, and then I would go deeper into the posture. So when you're stretching, you are basically keeping at length whatever tissue you have available. With block therapy, we are creating more tissue to lengthen because we are taking it off the bone. It's stuck and adhered to the bone. So if you imagine, you know, this is the length of your hamstring, basically the fascia winds around. We wind down and we've got all these hooks. So if you see somebody with cellulite, all that is fascia gripping in a spiral fashion onto the bone. And it does that to protect us because the fascia is here to support our bodies and to keep us upright. So if we're not conscious of posture and we start falling out of alignment over time, I mean, just look at anybody standing. We should be like a building with proper alignment all the way up the chain. Most people are either shifting to one side, they're collapsing in. You've got people on phones doing this. Like everybody is collapsing in. So the fascia says, hey, if I keep letting you do that, you're going to tip off balance and you're not even going to be able to stand upright. So the fascia grips and hooks to bone to stabilize us. It's these grips that block blood and oxygen flow to everything on the other side, but also create that appearance. So it also stops range of motion though. So when we get in with the block, and part of what we do with the block, it's not just lying on the tool and breathing, it's searching for pain, and we spiral in because the whole system is based on the Fibonacci sequence. Everything in the universe is built on this sequencing of numbers, including how our bodies form, the galaxies. That's the Fibonacci sequence, the spiral of everything in nature, as is how our body ages. We spiral down. You know, we don't just collapse in this linear way. We spiral and age in a forward rotational direction. So we want to tap into those seams of time, which we do as we guide you on the block to slowly twist in. You're searching for pain. You're finding those adhesions. A really good analogy I've used is if you had saran wrap wrapped around a piece of wood and you had it in the hot summer sun for 3 months, it's basically a gluey mess. So try to find each layer. If you had to, you wouldn't go and try to find the ends. You could shear it though, and you would shear apart the layers. So by shearing, or think of like opening a bottle of wine, you're not going to drive the cork straight in, you have to screw it in. And that's how we allow ourselves to dive deeper through dense layers, is through that spiral movement. So we do that on the block. I started that with my hands. Fluid isometrics is basically spiraling into tissue with my hands. And then the block became the self-care version, and applying that same science behind it in order to drive through those layers to get to the bone where the root of the problem is, because that is where the fascia will grip with the most powerful seal, holding us out of alignment. So doing anything where you're rubbing on the surface you'll affect the surface, but the surface isn't the problem. It's deeper than that. The surface is simply one layer of God knows how many.
So really I'm untangling my hamstrings is what's happening, which is
That's
why
right.
I'm getting the length, which makes a lot of sense, because if you're pulling them apart, they're not really doing anything. It's the untwisting of it. That makes so much sense to me. And it's, I mean, you guys don't even know. I have pictures. I should post them on social media. My husband, I made him take pictures of my downward dog. And it is pretty remarkable, because I really thought it's just not going to happen in this lifetime. And downward dog is not an easy posture. It's actually hard, I think. And when you cannot put your feet on the floor and when you cannot straighten your legs, I think it's a really hard posture to hold. It's not a resting posture. And so it's always been this like extra challenge to try to figure this out. And I just cannot believe the amount of change I've seen in such a short amount of time compared to all this time. I mean, I went through yoga teacher training and didn't see this kind of change. It was more like understanding that I'm going to have to be a certain way. And now that I'm working with the fascia, it's like, oh my God, like this makes so much sense. Like everything's unraveling and untwisting, and my posture is better. It's not where I want it to be, but I know it'll get there eventually. But it is like shifting, and I feel strength coming back into my back. But it's interesting you talked about the twisting, because as a yoga teacher, and I'm sure you know this, Deanna, but you guys who are, whether you're teaching or a student, and I guess if you get to a class in any time in the near future with people, so I guess that's a thing. But if you're in a class of people who are in, whether it's yoga or workout or whatever, and they're all in their little athletic outfits, you can see the twists in their back. Like I have like a crease on the left side. It's not on the right side. It's like I'm obviously creased this direction. And you notice it like as a yoga teacher, like in the classes, you can see very easily. First off, you see everyone's alignment is totally whack, but you also can see like how everyone is twisted in one direction. It's kind of amazing.
And that's part of what the assessment portion to become a block therapist is in Block Therapy University. I teach people how to look at the body and identify the cause sites by seeing what is pulling on what's twisting what. When you start to really train your eyes, you can see the lines in the fascia. It's quite fascinating. So, and when you can see it, you can't unsee it. And I have people telling me that all the time. They're like, oh, because of you, every time I'm walking around, all I do is I look at people's posture. And it's like, yeah, because once you awaken to the fact that you know where the body should be, you see how dramatic the population is out of alignment. And it's crazy. And I come from the place where I truly believe that posture and breath are key for everything, because that is the fascia. The posture is the outward expression of what the fascia has done over time. And the fascia will bind garbage, negative emotion, negative memory. It all gets held in this lock that we have. So as we start to let it go and it starts to release, we're talking about that detoxification component. Yeah. That's the beauty of this. And it's lovely because it's a process, and layer after layer after layer, you start cleaning out the closet. So you're not diving into the most traumatic space in your body. You go through the layers so that you can start to really get a grip on what's happening with the breath. You start to release it day after day after day. And the stronger you can connect to that breath, the faster the process happens and the cleaner we become. So it's really this lovely journey. And there definitely is healing crises for people where they get afraid, but that's what the block therapy community is all about. We're there to support you. We've got over 3,000 members now. We've got all the teachers in there, plus people that have been blocking for years. And what I love about that is I'm not an expert on fibromyalgia or MS or Parkinson's or any other realm of things that I haven't personally experienced. The person that has fibromyalgia that does block therapy is the expert on fibromyalgia and block therapy. So the community is loaded with people with a bunch of, well, with everything, because there's 3,000 people and we pretty much covered the gamut, and the community keeps growing. So you get the response from people. It's not just Deanna saying, oh, this is the way that it is. I don't have all the answers. Every single individual that's in there is a teacher and a student. I'm a teacher and a student. I'm still learning on myself. I'm still uncovering things. And what's really exciting is I'm 20 years in, and there's no end to the stuff that I still have to uncover. And I love that, because each year you just keep moving forward. And I don't believe we will ever be that place of perfection where we don't need to continue to uncover and to melt through adhesion. Gravity's constantly pulling us down. The crazy world we live in is going to be afflicting us with stress and all of those things. So that continues to get added in. So this is a lifestyle. And what's great about it is you can do it lying down.
Yes, it's true. It's true. And it really puts you in a nice space. Like, when I do it, it's usually like at night when I'm done working, and it's like before I go to bed or before I get my salt bath, and I just like breathe and lay on this block, and it's like, oh my gosh. And I'm wondering too, it's making me think about the energy when you're talking about twisting to one side or another, because as a clairvoyant, I can tell you that I can see the left and right brain activity versus each other, and how what's dominant and what's not. And even just knowing myself, I'm left-handed and I'm left dominant. My left face is different. So I'm very Vata in Ayurveda, because I'm not symmetric at all. I'm very asymmetric. So, but you can see energetically when somebody has really become dominant in one part of their brain function and one part of their body. And I'm sure it matches the physical. I'm sure it does. And now I'm going to pay attention, because it does make me think of that, because I look at that when I look at like, where is this person in their life? And, are their creative channels open? And I've worked really, really hard to have both my left and right brain function work equally. And there's actually yoga practices and balancing postures, I'm sure you know this, Deanna, to work both sides of the brain together, to bring them together in partnership. It's actually a really important part of the healing process, spiritually, emotionally, and physically too. So it just makes me think, I'm like, ooh, I'm going to start looking at that physical piece with that energetic component, because we are very dominant, and most everyone is very right brain dominant, like that spiritual, psychic, creative side. And that's what's so exciting about this time. As challenging as it is, as ugly as it is right now, in this wild Twilight Zone world we live in, it's also the age of Aquarius that has been activated. And that's all about creativity and collaboration, which is this whole other part of us. And so don't you wonder if your work, Deanna, with what you're doing isn't part of this like global shift of moving from that kind of way of living to another way by like completely opening your body back up?
I believe that for 20 years. That's what I came here with a mission, and it is my mission to get this out there. And it's been a 20-year process, which has not been fun. It has not been easy by any stretch. I didn't start with the idea of running a global company. I was a body worker that had something to share. And if I want, and I'm still using the same computer I bought 9 years ago. I was determined in my body worker years that I am never going to succumb to technology, but learned if I want to get this out there, I have no choice. So yes, I very much feel that this is a big part of what needs to happen. I just want to back up though, because you were talking about the left and the right. And one of the things that I tell people to look at is the nostrils. There's a book called The Science of Breath, fantastic book. The mechanism of breathing through the nose is beautiful. There's 3 turbinates in the base of the nostril. And the way that the air goes in one nostril feeds one side of the body, opposite, same as the other. So if you look at your nostrils, if one is more open than the other, that's letting you know that there's going to be one side that is definitely not getting that oxygenation or cleaning. So that will be, from that perspective, the weaker side. So I have a nose class to teach people how to bring symmetry to the face through here, because the breath is the key. It is so, I mean, it's everything. Again, we die in 5 minutes without it.
Yeah, because that's a thing that bugs me. I mean, really, if we want to get real, you guys, like my nostrils are very different. Like they're very different and they really bother me. Like this one's much bigger. So this is my right side. So that means the left, right? Yeah.
Well, and when I was a kid, I had a nosebleed every day for probably 3 years on this side. So every single day and they were nuts. They were crazy nosebleeds. And I would hold this side of my face every day for years until I grew past this issue. So by the time I was finished. I had a very crooked face. My nose was over here. My jaw was all messed up. My eyes were completely different sizes. So I've worked to put everything back. And it's been a process and a journey, but I mean, I've made huge gains in bringing symmetry back to my body. And again, I get so excited because I still have so far to go, but how far I've come is exciting. It has been 20 years. You can see my before pictures on my website, and yeah, they're different. I remember running into my ex-husband about 8 or 10 years ago. And I said, "Hey, how you doing?" And he looked at me. He had no idea who I was.
Ah!
That was such a cool moment. I'm like, okay, I've changed.
Amazing. Oh
Yeah.
my God, I love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's exciting, the symmetry part, because energetically I feel so much more symmetric than I ever have. But there's definitely physical things like so I had neurological issues from mold exposure. Like when my body succumbs to toxins, that's what happens to me. And I get a lot of peripheral neuropathy and everything. And I actually feel that time is done. I don't think I'll ever have that again. But this side again, this side kind of droops, and you guys can probably tell, or maybe not. It's much better than it used to be. I mean, it's actually like mostly healed, but you can tell there's a difference in like how my face looks. And so that's real work to be done. And I'm excited to hear that that's all part of this too, because it's not even cosmetic. It's, you start to get to a point where it is energy. You know that something isn't balanced and you want to correct the imbalance. And, you know, much like what you're talking about, Deanna, it's like, I can't get enough because everything is cured. It's like an amazing thing. It was like that moment where it's like, I don't have Hashimoto's anymore. It doesn't even exist. You know, I don't have any neurological symptoms actually. Like they're totally gone. Like I don't have migraines. I used to get ocular migraines and God, like it's amazing to me what we can heal and cure and fix and change in just getting back right. And
Well, and
that
that's what I love about what's happening too on the planet. And that's where there's two sides to this, because how quickly has the population or the pollution decreased?
yeah.
The animals, you know, they're singing. It's beautiful to see the changes. And I remember listening to Dr. Zach Bush, and he was saying how quickly the soul can regenerate if we do the proper things. And the body's the same. And people ask me all the time, am I too old to start this? Is it too late for me? It is never too late to melt through adhesions and to support blood and oxygen flow to your cells. It will only help. To what degree you get is dependent on a bunch of factors, but it will only improve things by feeding your system, by connecting to this powerful mechanism. And the breath is the key, but we need to unlock that fascia to access the breath. And that's the problem. We all have, you know, similar to a frozen shoulder, we have a frozen diaphragm right now because we haven't been using it properly. So it's become very weak and it's fallen in under the weight of the rib cage, head, arms, and hands. And today, what is my most pressing thing that I have to do is get this younger population on this tool, because babies today are born not breathing diaphragmatically. You and I were born breathing that way, and then you lose it over time. Kids today are coming out in a completely different place. They are not breathing from that space, so they are not developing properly, and we're seeing that. There's a multitude of reasons why this is happening. However, this is something that we can change. And so as of the fall, I'm really going to be spending a lot of time developing further the kids program that we have, teaching mothers how to get their babies to start breathing diaphragmatically. It's not hard to do. It just takes a little bit of understanding. So that's all coming in the fall. And that is my next real push, because I feel that we have pretty much everything we need in our member site and all of that stuff for the average person to go through and to pretty much uncover any issue that they have. We actually have a very beautiful 21-day head, neck, and face program. We did a challenge in April. So anybody that wants to come into our block therapy community, you can see that the befores and afters of people, it's 21 days. I was blown away. I'm like, oh my gosh,
Wow,
that's
go in and do
amazing.
that one.
Oh,
Now I'm like all into fixing the face stuff.
Well,
Man.
and part of it is also strengthening the tongue muscle. It's the foundation. People don't realize if people have what they think is a double chin, it's a displaced tongue. It's become weak. So right here, we have the thyroid, we have the two main arteries supplying the head, the brain, the eyes, the hair, the skin, the whole works. And if we're sitting like this, which pretty much everybody's forward and falling over to one side, that's blocked. And it's partly activating the tongue, strengthening this muscle to in part support the weight of the head. So that's what block therapy is. It's not just about lying on a block and breathing. It's also about owning the proper alignment for your cells so everything can be properly fed and clean. And again, it's that effortless effort piece. When we understand how to hold our body properly rather than letting gravity decide where we're going to fall, then we age in a completely different way. And it's actually, I don't know that anti-aging is even the proper term anymore, but you can take time out of your tissue very effectively, rejuvenate cells, and become more youthful in your body.
Yeah. Well, and of course there is no time, right? And that's really the thing, is like, you can reverse it because it doesn't exist. Right. And, you know, I'm loving this whole concept. You know, I forget where I read it, or if we might've talked about it, but your body's meant to live like 180 years. And, you know, this is just a kind of a random thing, but, you know, I know when I'm going to leave the planet, like, just know. And it's changed over the years. Like there was a definite extension that occurred when I changed my diet, my lifestyle, and all those things. Well, since March, just randomly, I was having a conversation in which that came up. And so I just checked in like, oh, you know, and there's like 20 extra years. Now, when I say 20 extra years, I'm talking like 110 years old. And so I sat with this for about a month, which is why I'm even talking about it, because I had to sit with it and be like, what's going on? And the message that I've gotten from Spirit is, we are extending our lifetime, our life cycles right now in this moment by shifting our reality. And that the collapse of the systems, especially the healthcare system across our nation, but also across the planet, that the functional, the integrative, the holistic, that's what's going to come forward. That's our light coming forward. So the Dr. Zach Bush and Dr. Ben Lynch and all of these incredible people coming forward to give us accurate and clear information. And that is now in a timeline in which we see this extension of our life. Like, what a fun little tidbit, right? Like, here we go. It's like accessible and available to us. And we have the power to change that. That's just us in our own way of living and experiencing things, but there is a positive shift happening on the planet right now that's allowing this to happen. So that was just a fun little.
I truly believe this is the most exciting time in human history. We've all chosen to be here to go through this together and to create a better world for the future generations. And I believe we will see many more generations because we will extend our lifespan through the process of what we're doing. And again, it's just so exciting because it's all based in love and harmony. And we've been divided and fear-based for probably ever. So to be able to actually move into this new time is unprecedented, which means we all get to partake in what that looks like. And how exciting. We get to design a new world from a place of love and consciousness. So what will that look like? And my new book will be out. I finally have a book that I have a publisher for, which I'm so excited. It's called Unblock Your Body. And in the last chapter, I talk about what would the world look like if we were all fascia conscious souls. And it's different because we're not fascia conscious souls. We're not diaphragmatic breathers. We are people that have succumbed to ego and fear. And that's what we've been designed to do. And nobody, I don't say nobody, many people don't even know that there's a different option because that's not the information that we were given. And that's sad. So to be able to stand in front of people and too, that's another beautiful thing because of this time, we're all getting in front of our computer and we're having interviews. I don't watch television. I don't watch movies anymore. I educate myself. I listen to people communicating, talking about things that interest me, and I'm learning. And that is so exciting because through this process, we are starting to come together. And I think people would be surprised at how many of us are already on this path, planning on doing things that are going to make a massive difference in the world. And we just have to listen and have to look for what it is that we want to learn and be open and connect to your cells. And that's what the block does. The block makes us more connected to our intuition, to our higher self, to the truth, because it's allowing your cells to speak as opposed to having those gaps in the system. So now we're stuck in memory, which is where fear lives. So when we open up those cells and we connect to them, we are connected to our higher self and to the greater sense of truth. And people understand truth. It resonates. If you hear somebody that's telling you a lie, you kind of intuitively know, because there's an energy behind it. When somebody's speaking the truth, you intuitively know because there's an energy behind it. And yeah, I would say if anybody's trying to sell something to you, probably there's another motive. It might not be a negative or an untruthful motive, but just listen to people that just want to share information, because they're not trying to force a mandate down your throat. They're simply wanting to share if you're willing to hear and to learn. And that's the beauty of what's happening today, is we're communicating more with each other, and we have the opportunity to get in front of people that we wouldn't have been able to before as well.
So good. So good. Well, and if you guys are interested in block therapy and looking at what we have to offer, block therapy is one of our official partners. So if you go to the website, lisamgunshore.com, just click on partners. They're right at the top. You'll be able to find that. It takes you right to your online store to take a look at everything that block therapy has to offer. I've had a block, since March, April, and it's just amazing. I mean, you crave it. Like I crave it. I crave it like so bad right now because I've been sitting for multiple days. I'm like, oh my God, get me on. But so I'm really craving it right now. But for sure. And then what's new, Deanna? So your book's coming out. So let everybody, I want to give you some space to let everybody know how they are going to be able to get that. But also what's new, what's up besides that? I mean, that's kind of a big deal, but there's probably other things too.
Oh, well, we have I can't share some of it yet. We're going to be doing a huge launch with some really awesome stuff. September 17th is the date of the launch. So all of our teachers are going to be informed of everything new. Quinn and myself and my team, we're working hard through the summer to get everything prepared, because a lot of really great, exciting changes. Again, for me, the kids program is going to be huge. Quinn has put in his Block for Fitness program into our member site. The book is coming out, so there's lots of new stuff, but it's all along the same lines of everything that we're all doing. It's just really to teach people how to become their own self-care, healthcare advocate, how to learn how to listen to their own bodies and to support proper fascia health so that we can live the lives that we want to live and thrive in ourselves instead of simply survive, which is really what a lot of people are doing. They're just going day by day just to get to the next day without any real purpose or passion behind their life. Because again, if we don't have that health piece, it's very hard to really exist in the most authentic way to thrive. When we have health, it's a lot easier. I've been in chronic pain, and it's hard to feel joy. It's hard to do anything other than focus on how do I get through the day, because pain is so exhausting and debilitating. So when we have a tool to teach us to unlock those tensions in the body and to promote flow, it truly is a game changer in how we live our life in general. So there's a lot of new things coming down the pipe, but it's all in alignment with what we already have and what we're already doing. But I was so blessed. 2 weeks ago, I had a foreword written by a gentleman I had never met before. He's also a published author from the same publishing company. He read my book, Dr. John Doherty. And when I read it, I felt it was almost like it was the day after my birthday too. And I kind of felt like, okay, my ego's satisfied. It was so beautiful. So it's coming out in a month. And as soon as it's out, I'll let everybody know. And yeah, so just continue to share the message and just be real.
I love it. Well, I'll tell you what, I've got 4 guinea pigs here for the kids' work because they all sit in front of their devices, shriveled up in a corner on their iPad. So the more we can untangle them, the better. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And, there is this energy of, the negative agenda kind of like compressing and collapsing. So maybe, we can think of it this way, that one of the best ways to create our new reality is to untangle and to uncompress ourselves and to open ourselves up to what spirit has to offer and the absolute best loving experience and environment we could possibly have. So,
and if I may also share, I am having Lisa as my guest on our discussions with the Fascia Masters, August the 11th at 10:30 a.m. Central. So the platform will be for Lisa to share all of the amazing, incredible things that she's doing to bring love to the world. And I am so, so impressed with what you're doing, Lisa. Truly, you just are such a light in this world. And thank you so much. So I'll be in the driver's seat. You'll be in the passenger seat for the next one.
Thank you so much. Like, I'm excited, and, I'm just so happy we connected, truly. I mean, it's really just a gift, and I know there's more to come, and we'll keep doing this. And I'm just having like a thought out loud before we go, but I don't know if you've watched Barry Rissman on here. No. But she's got an incredible book called Evolving Your Yoga, which, by the way, you would love. But she's also an Iyengar trained teacher. And you guys have this energy. I'm just thinking, I'm going to write you guys. I think the three of us could have a very interesting conversation, but I think the two of you guys have to connect, because
I'd love that.
Very like-minded philosophies and energy. And I don't know, but that's something I'm thinking of in this moment. So I can't wait to see you on August 11th. And you have a great YouTube. So Deanna has a great YouTube channel also. So you guys can find that. I'll put that in the show notes as well. And so I've been watching that and learning all sorts of stuff. So I'm excited to be on it. And just thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. You guys had such great comments and shares and questions. I just really loved and appreciated each of you so much. And we're actually back in 20 minutes, believe it or not, with Julie Hoyle and Taria Ward talking about phases of awakening, which is a good way to wrap up our day, because all of these things we're talking about is all part of those phases, So.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you all for listening. Have a lovely day.
Yes. Bye, everyone.
Bye.